Divedi, now Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath has stirred a massive controversy by pitching reservation for Dalits in minority institutions, particularly Aligarh Muslim University and Jamia Millia Islamia, both centrally funded institutions. So while cases pertaining to these two institutes are sub judice and are in fact in the Supreme Court, it raises larger questions of minority rights and at the same time efforts to create institutes of par excellence. Is the idea to make provision for minorities to protect their educational right inherently indicative of inequality towards the privileged class, or is this essential for creating a sense of security to minorities? That's the big debate we are having tonight in the studio. The idea behind Article 30 of the Constitution is to provide minorities with the fundamental right to establish and govern their own educational institution. Is it time to access and assess how beneficial this really has been? Let's first listen in to Yogi Adityanath's bite, the sound bite that really has stirred a hornet's nest, and then reaction coming in from Subramaniam Swamy and from the Muslim cleric as well.
शिक्षा संस्था सरकार से पैसा लेकर चलाती है तो उसको अनिवार्य है हमारे संविधान के अनुसार कि वो शेड्यूल कास्ट के लिए, शेड्यूल ट्राइब के लिए रिजर्वेशन बनानी पड़ेगी। तो इसमें अलीगढ़ मुस्लिम यूनिवर्सिटी और जामिया इनको कोई रास्ता नहीं है, सिर्फ इसको मानने के लिए।
I am requesting to the UG's Union Grant Commission and other concerned agencies that the reservation with regard to the dual caste, dual tribe and other communities, those are the entitled for the reservation. They also get the chance under the reservation category in JMU and Aligarh Muslim University.
इस तरह के बयान देना कहीं ना कहीं ये 2019 की तैयारी कर रहे हैं। फिर एक बार जिन्ना साहब जो है कब्र से उठकर आएंगे, फिर उनको ये लोग सजदा करेंगे, फिर उन पर बात करेंगे और बहुत सारी बातें पैदा होंगी मुस्लिम यूनिवर्सिटी को लेकर।
All right, that is the big debate we are having today in the studios. Let's open this up. K.K. Agarwal, former Vice Chancellor of IP University, Mr. Deshratha Nigam, Senior Lawyer of the Supreme Court, Dr. Khwaja Iftikhar Ahmed, an Islamic scholar, joining us as well on the broadcast, along with Madhaw, Anand, the political analyst with me here in the studio. Okay, I do want to begin with Mr. Deshratha Nigam. Sir, as we open this up and as we begin our discussion on what's clearly a very, very contentious issue, there are two sides to it, sir. Do you agree with what Yogi Adityanath said today, that at the end of the day, when it is a centrally funded institution, when it's a centrally funded university, then it has to open doors for reservations for SC, ST and OBC, as is the norm for all centrally funded universities?
First of all, I straight away yes to that proposition. And secondly, this is not the first time it has happened. It has happened earlier also. People have demanded it. And since the Constitution mandates the upliftment of Dalits and SCs and STs and OBCs, so it is in line with the constitutional provisions that we have that the Dalit reservation should be there in any state-funded university, whether it is centrally funded or funded by the states. And therefore, it is in tune with the spirit of the Constitution that the reservation should be given to these communities in minority institutions which are funded by the states. In fact, it should be, to me, appears that
no,
it should
but I really want to play the devil's advocate here. We'll get Dr. Khwaja Iftikhar Ahmed as well in a bit. But when you see the Article 29, when you see Article 30 of the Constitution, protection of minorities' interest, and of course their right to establish and administer educational institutions, it very categorically says that, when you talk about 29, a citizen should not be denied admission into any educational institution, which is their right as a minority, and their right to establish, administer educational institutions. So it's a fundamental right in the Constitution. So the fact that when they say we want to run it the way we want to, does it have a legal ground? Does it have a legal basis? I know it is in Supreme Court. I know a large part of it is sub judice as well. But this opens door to a much larger debate.
See, let me tell you, fundamental rights are not absolute rights. We all know that. They come with certain restrictions and riders. And the very fact, the taxpayers' money, and taxpayers are Dalits as well.
Yes.
So once their money is being utilized, they have a right to be admitted. And everybody these institutions are funded by the state. The aid comes, the grant comes from the state, and therefore, if they were private institutions, then one could have thought separately about them. We can have a separate debate on that. But the fact remains, the moment the public money comes from public exchequer, everybody has a right in terms of the constitutional provisions, and the minority rights and other rights have to be balanced. It cannot be a one-way right.
Okay. Okay, I do want to begin, also take this debate forward. Mr. Agarwal, you've been former Vice Chancellor of IP University. I want to ask you that when India wants to create excellence, institutions of excellence, when it is looking to do so within IIT, when it's looking to do so within IIM, which are clearly institutions of global repute and excellence, they incorporate reservation despite having a very clear charter of wanting to exceed, wanting to excel. Then what stops these centrally funded institutions to also do the same?
I see absolutely no reason for them not to have it, because if best of the institutions in the country are persuaded by the Constitution to accept reservation policy of the Government of India, these centrally funded universities, like all other universities, we have about 30 central universities now. The rules cannot be different for different universities. As a matter of fact, when we create difference, we create more problems. When the reservation is a part of the Constitution of India, as long as it is a part of the Constitution of India, it's a mandate of all centrally funded institutions to accept it, and I just see no reason in this debate.
So where does the anomaly stand right now, Madhav? Yes, there is a political side to it as well. The other argument that has been there, we'll get Dr. Khwaja Iftikhar to really tell us and take some of these questions that we have. But the argument that is coming in from the opposition side is that, well, the BJP faces flack from being perceived to be anti-Dalit. It faces flack for being not proactive when the quote-unquote dilution of SC ST Atrocities Act was taking place, which is why this is a googly that is really being thrown, and also a diversionary tactic. So there is politics behind it as well.
See, apart from political repercussion, first of all, I welcome this initiative and this demand which came from the Yogi Adityanath ji. This is a very genuine demand, and I urge from all political parties to support this initiative or this request, I can say. And he clearly told, if BHU can give a reservation to all community, why not Aligarh Muslim University or Jamia?
Right.
That's a big question.
Yes.
And the Constitution, Article 30, what you have said, it clearly says if it is funded by the central government,
Yes.
and if it is established by the minority group, in that case also minority can only run the organization. There is no clear direction ki whether the entire admission process or the scholarship will be only given to the minority. And the broader thing is that means it's under the Supreme Court, its matter is prejudiced in the Supreme Court. So, and apart from all these things, as part of the political repercussion is concerned, of course, BJP is now afraid, there is apprehension in the BJP that there is a polarization of Dalit and Muslim community. So, of course, if it is going to be happen, and if central government amend the laws, definitely there will be political repercussion, and there will be, I can say that means there will be a strong chance for the BJP.
Okay, you want to come in, sir?
Let me see. In India, you cannot separate politics. It has to be an integral part of decision.
Of course.
And politics is about aspirations of the people. If you take the positive aspects of the politics.
Okay.
And if you look at certain political parties are trying to have a combination of Dalits and Muslims, despite knowing that there are inherent contradictions, like minority Muslim institutions do not want to give reservation to the Dalits. And how can you then try to have that political combination of Dalits and Muslims? That paradox will always remain. Howsoever people may try to have that combination.
No, but sir, there is a valid argument that is being said that in the villages, in the Bharat that we see away from the TV studios, the perception, the narrative that is building is that BJP is anti-Dalit. Whether it is in Gujarat, whether it is in state after state, and that narrative is what is forcing Yogi Adityanath to respond.
Some of the elections, if you look at the statistics, Dalits have voted for BJP. Even in these elections also. Let us look at the combinations. So you cannot just we cannot just make a sweeping statement that Dalits are not voting for BJP. They are voting for BJP, but people are trying to create that perception, that divide among the Hindu community, and trying to align Dalits with the Muslims. But these inherent paradoxes and contradictions, I think Dalits will see through.
Okay, we have to see the timing. We have to see the timing. He told 2 days back only, and now that this country is in the election mode right now. So of course there is some kind of political intention, and there is a huge apprehension within the BJP. There is a polarization of Dalit and Muslim community, and that reflected in the by-election also.
Of course, yes.
So there will be political repercussion if central government is going to amend the laws.
So you had a point to make.
I'm only saying that the politics will play its role in every decision, and particularly when a statement comes from Chief Minister, it obviously has to have a political overtone. But nonetheless, the statement that the minority institutions can be run by minorities, they have a right to admission and all that, is never absolute. When I was Vice Chancellor of IP University, we also had some minority colleges, but the right of minority institutions in administering themselves is not absolute. Tomorrow they say we'll appoint substandard teachers, university cannot accept it. So rights are given in the constitution, but they cannot be absolute.
Okay, but I think there were some cases in the past as well where the appointment of staff is sort of allowed as far as minority institutions are concerned. That's a separate discussion altogether. But you know, the larger debate, of course, the political overtones that it takes, and also the fact that is it time for a reform. But you know, Mr. Agarwal, I want to ask you this question, that is it time for a massive reform to take place? You know, when you say, and I'll tell you why I say this, you know, the moment you say AMU and Jamia Millia Islamia, there are liberals who say ki, the report that came out last year, that let's go a step forward, let's reform BHU as well. You know, what stops us from reforming BHU also? So do you think there is a need for a larger debate around reforming or relooking as far as educational policy is concerned?
No, that way, if you ask me this very broad question, and I certainly will say that there is a need for very large debate on reforming our higher education system in a great sense, our central universities, as has been raised many times. How is it that none of the central universities finds a place in international ranking? Those are the issues which must be looked at, and when we look at those issues, it is BHU, AMU, Jamia, Delhi, JNU, all included. So reforms in higher education require a much broader canvas to look at, and reservation is a very, very small component in that larger canvas, and excellence versus reservation could be a debate.
How do you expect AMU and JMI, that is Jamia Millia, to respond? I know there is the Supreme Court case, there is of course now a certain amount of it is sub judice, but still, how do you expect them to respond to it? Because you know, they got the last time also they received funds, they said that, you know, this is not enough, we need to now start raising funds on our own. There have been a certain amount of perception that has been built around AMU and Jamia Millia Islamia. How do you see them responding to what many believe is a very genuine demand coming in, that they need to put in place reservation?
If I separate out the political element of it, requirement of funds for all central universities is there. I am not sure that it's only AMU or Jamia which are short of funds. Every university is short of funds, and at least half a dozen vice chancellors of central universities have shared with me that they are short of funds. Because we need funds to develop and bring in reforms. So AMU and Jamia also must be short of funds, I don't deny that, and if they have to raise funds, they are free to raise funds by any means, but that does not still give them the absolute right of doing whatever they wish to.
Okay, let's take that question to Dr. Khwaja Iftikhar joining us on this broadcast. Sir, it's always a pleasure to have you, because you know, we consider you to be a very moderate voice in the community. So how do you see, sir, the demand that is being made for reservation for Dalits, SC, ST to be implemented as far as AMU and Jamia Millia is concerned?
You know, there are three issues involved in this debate. Number one, the statement made by the Honorable Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, Yogi Adityanath ji, it raises a larger issue. And the larger issue is that in an institution which is established by a minority, whether in that institution, as per the constitutional provisions, there is 50% reservation for the community establishing the institution. Okay, this is a statutory provision. Now coming to the Jamia and the AMU issue, now both the universities issues are pending before the court of law.
Yes.
The matter is sub judice. All right. Now AMU as of today is not enjoying a minority status in the sense that it is in the court of law and it is being disputed, whatever the apex court of the country comes out with the judgment accordingly, the state of will be determined.
No, I understand that, sir.
But my point is, as long as the status quo is maintained, we have to go by the constitutional provision. We have to be governed by the act, which is the act of the parliament, which governs the Aligarh Muslim University as a central university, and also Jamia Millia Islamia.
Okay.
Now, the third point that I want to raise is that as far as the Dalit reservation is concerned, no, once the AMU or Jamia Millia Islamia, for that matter, are established by the apex court of the country, that they are no more minority institutions, automatically they will fall in the category of Banaras Hindu University or Delhi University, or for that matter,
of course,
any other university, and the reservation policy will come into force.
Right.
All right. As far as the current status of the University of AMU and Jamia is concerned, you know, if the government of the day is keen to offer the reservation to our Dalit sisters and brothers, then they can give out of the 50% which is left.
Okay, so you welcome this this thought process. You would not be averse to a position like this. I know it is sub judice, sir. I know it is sub judice, but I'm asking you a larger question, sir.
Listen, please. I am not welcoming. I am stating a position which is the position of the Constitution and which is the position of the Act which are governing both Jamia Millia Islamia and the Aligarh Muslim University.
Okay.
That's my point.
See, let me tell you, if central government, as suggested by the UP Chief Minister, is keen, they can bring amendments to the Act, central acts, even if it is sub judice before the court. The Parliament is competent to make changes in the Act, and they can bring this reservation if they want to.
Okay.
And second thing,
Absolutely.
the rules and guidelines should be identical for each universities. If it is funded by the central government, then there should be identical policy. And each and every university should follow the same policy. And even the Article 30 clearly says only administrative issues will be with the minority. Other things central government can do as per the constitution, whatever the reservation.
Dr. Zikar, you want to respond to that?
That exactly is the issue before the court of law.
No, that is exactly the issue in front of the court of law, of course, and we will go by what it is. But sir, I want to ask you a larger question, sir. If the institution receives funds from the central government, isn't it morally incumbent? I am saying morally. That's the word I'm using here, sir. Morally incumbent on the institution to open doors to reservation policy that is accepted universally in India?
You know, my dear, the point is that it's not a question of the will and wish of the university authorities. Or for that matter, anybody else. It is simply a question, what are the provisions of the Constitution and the concerned Act in place? Now the larger question is, are the institutions going to be governed by the Constitution and by the constitutional provisions and by the Act which is in place governing the institution? Or is it going to be my wish and will?
You want to respond to that?
That is the larger question.
It all boils down to courts. Courts decide for us.
No. Let me tell you. What is before the court is the existing provisions of the Act. If the Parliament so desires, can make amendments to that. That is not. Those amendments can be challenged on separate grounds. But if it is before the court, it does not stop Parliament from making any changes in the Act. The amendments can be brought in the Act, and the reservation policy can be very easily extended to all these universities.
Yes, okay, go ahead. Yes.
When this issue came up before the court of law, even when the minorities minister, Mr. Mukhtar Abbas Naqvi was consulted on the issue, even he said the government is not against the minority character of the AMU and Jamia Millia Islamia.
I need to add just one.
This is what the position of the minority minister of the government of the day.
Even the NDA government, this government has filed given a recommended affidavit in the Supreme Court, and they have clearly shown their interest.
Yes, the affidavit clearly says they want reservation.
UPA 2 government has given a different opinion, but NDA government has given a clear opinion.
Yes.
So there is a clear.
The
intention of the government is very much clear. The government
let me add, presuming the Supreme Court, says that you cannot give reservation. Still the Parliament can do it, because if you remember Shah Banu's case, so Supreme Court went in a different direction.
Yes, they overturned it. That's correct. They came out with the law.
Parliament
and the same thing happened with the Dalit Atrocity Act.
Yes.
The opposition party is asking to amend the law.
Yes, they came out with an ordinance as well. Yes. So okay, let's listen to him. He's on a phone line. Let's listen to him also. Yes.
Jamia and AMU, it applies across the board, all the institutions of minority institutions, whether they are of Sikhs or they are of Muslims or Jains or Buddhists, for that matter of anybody else. It's a very larger question, larger debate. It requires a national debate.
I agree with you, sir. I agree with you. It requires a national debate and it requires a fresh perspective, maybe. That's what I think. Yes, sir, you have a point.
There was a time when every central university was enacted by a separate act in the parliament. That happened to all the first generation central universities, and that is how AMU and Jamia also have separate acts, like DU, JNU, University of Hyderabad, all have separate acts. So these two universities, AMU and Jamia, are enacted by parliament as a minority institution, but I do not see that forbids reservation. That only says these are minority institutions, taking it to mean that because they are minority institutions, therefore reservation is not applicable is probably more of a historical precedence than legal correctness. Now we have seen the reason, and in the second generation of central universities, we have rather making one umbrella act for all universities. Tomorrow, if one umbrella act has to be there for even previous universities, then what will happen to the reservation?
But you know, Mr. Nigam,
I think it would be a welcome gesture by the government of the day if it brings about an amendment and extends this reservation in the present status of reservation to the Dalits. Why not?
Oh, absolutely. But, you know, Mr. Nigam, I want to ask you the other question that Dr. Iftikhar was also, you know, touching upon, which is that when you talk about minority institutions, are we being myopic by restricting ourselves to an AMU or a Jamia Millia Islamia? There are institutions run by, you know, for the Sikhs. There are institutions run by the Jains, for the Jains. What about those institutions? Which is why I said you probably need a fresh perspective.
To the best of my knowledge, they are following the policy of Dalit reservation.
Okay,
no,
so
this is incorrect.
They are following the policy of Dalit reservation.
Incorrect.
It is only the Muslim institutions which are not following.
Okay,
no, this is
okay, let's get him to respond.
Verified.
Dr. Khwaja Iftikhar, you want to respond to that, sir?
I am saying this is factually incorrect. You can verify the fact. I have verified these facts.
Okay, so he's saying no, it isn't the case, it is the
No. To the best of my knowledge, I said there are institutions, I know of institutions of Jains and everything where they are following this policy. And if there is some of those institutions which are not following, let it be brought to the notice of the court.
Okay.
For example, as far as the institutions by our Jain brothers are concerned, since Jains are a very small community, you know, it is about 50-60 lakhs. So, and they have got plenty of institutions. So even if they have the provision of 50%, the Jain community is not having that amount of population which can be accommodated. So therefore, when you don't have that community, automatically the reservation passes to other categories. And
so he agrees with my proposition, but he's saying it is under compulsion they are doing it.
Of course. Yes, you were saying.
What I was trying to say is I'm not sure about the universities enacted for other minorities than Muslims, but I as Vice Chancellor had affiliated minority institutions which followed reservation. In Delhi itself, I had institutions run by Gurdwara Prabandha Committee, which were Sikh minority institutions. I had Jain minority institutions. They were all following reservations.
Which brings me to ask you the question I asked you earlier also, Dr. Khwaja Iftikhar. Isn't it morally incumbent? Isn't it morally incumbent to probably introspect and open doors of institutions on your own without to Dalits in this country without the Supreme Court's intervention?
I am absolutely for the reservation of Dalits in all the minority institutions, including Jamia Millia Islamia and the Aligarh Muslim University, and whatever amendments are required to be done, they should be done by the government of the day. It would be a very welcome gesture on part of the government.
All right, great. Okay, Mr. Anand, you want to respond?
What I'm going to say, see, that means if it is going to be happen, this will create a harmony between the two religious community. So it is good for the country also. So if there is a reservation for the Dalit, OBC or SC, ST, whatever, so this will create a harmony. So
and
the larger
politically, how significant it will be?
Yeah, of course.
One more question, which is a larger question again.
Yes.
You know, I think about a month back, the Sansan Chalak ji of RSS, Mohan Bhagwat ji, has raised a question on the very fundamentals of the reservation policy of the government and of the country. And he says that on the basis of the socio-economic status across the board to all communities, leaving aside the factor of religion, leaving aside the factor of caste, leaving aside the factor of language, the reservation should be extended to all the socio-economically backward classes of the country. And I think that is something which is based on actually the principle of fairness.
All right,
As of
okay.
now, whatever reservation we have, it is a highly politicized kind of a reservation.
Right.
It is a highly kind of a politicized reservation.
All right, Dr. Khwaja, I appreciate you joining us. As I said, it's always good to have a moderate perspective on the show. Completely running out of time, but in the interest of fairness, 10 seconds to Mr. Nigam to just respond to what he said, and then we close it. Yes.
I think he raised a very valid point. The socio-economic reservation and economic criteria already exists in the OBCs. The concept of a creamy layer
is there,
also exists.
Yeah,
so what he's saying is already
All right.
existing.
All right.
sentence.
Okay, one sentence.
My request and suggestion would be, let us not try to differentiate ourselves on rules and regulations. Let us try to differentiate ourselves in excellence. I know AMU and
Absolutely.
Jamia have great pockets.
Centers
Let
of
us
excellence
excel
is what we
them.
need to create. Appreciate you joining us, gentlemen, on this show. Centers of excellence is what need to be created, and maybe Supreme Court will show us the way. Thanks so much for watching this edition.